This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On the Air.
Welcome to What's News Dunedin, brought to you by Hazur Kebab, the radio show that spawned from the 21,000 plus strong local Otipoti Dunedin What's News Dunedin Facebook group. The group has been putting the social back into social media since 2020 with respectful adult debate and a sense of humour. I'm your host, Richard Knights. On today's show, we're talking to our wonderful guest, Kirsteen McLay from Starfishing for Peace, who are telling us more about themselves and what they do, as well as helping us look back at the posts that generate some of the most interactions over 2025. Those posts are the Racist and Regressive Treaty Principles Bill, a new council sitting around the council table in Dunedin, and Dunedin's new hospital and the roller coaster ride of cuts, and more cuts. So, welcome, Kirsteen. Nice to have you on the show.
Kia ora. Thank you for having me.
Now, before we get into the newsy type stuff and talking about you, we have our pun of the week. So basically, what we've got is on a Monday we have our Pun Day Monday, and then basically the best pun of the week brings itself to the show on Friday. So we'll see whether we have whether it's as funny in real life as it appears to be on the page itself. So. And because we're just doing a rundown of 2025, what we're looking at is I picked a random one that didn't win but came second across the year. So this pun of the week is: how many mystery writers does it take to change a light bulb? The answer is 2. One to put it in, and the other to give it an unexpected twist at the end.
Okay.
I quite like that one. I saw that one. I thought, no, we'll bring that one to the show. Now, before we get started on talking about the news from the year, what we're going to do is actually talk about our 3 pop questions, right? So there are 3 questions that I ask all my guests, ultimately to basically get under their skin, see how they're put together. So the first question is: when you have cream tea and you have a scone, right? So you have jam, you have cream. What goes on first?
Or a scone, as we say here in Aotearoa.
Oh yeah, everyone keeps pulling me up on that. But I like where I'm from. It's a scone.
You're from the UK.
I'm from the
Richard,
UK. Yeah, absolutely. So
right.
and I'm from the south of the UK. So
okay.
If you go to the north of the UK, it's back at.
I did have a year in London, so I sort of know.
Yeah, so it's a scone in London, but it's a scone if you go to Newcastle.
Oh, okay. So
we do
regional variation.
Oh, very much so. We do it both ways. So we have a scone or a scone, whichever way you want to call it. So it still tastes the same, even if you say it differently. Jam first or cream first?
Cream.
Cream.
Am I the opposite to you?
Well, you're the opposite to science, Kirsteen. It's like I'll explain what I mean by that. Actually, Devon and Cornwall have this big fight. Again, 2 counties in the UK. People over here might go, I've never heard of them. But Cornwall have a Cornish tea, which has the jam and then the cream on top. Devon has a Devonshire cream tea, and it puts the jam on last. So it puts the cream on first, and then the jam, which is the way you've just done it. Yeah. However, my brain says that that's the wrong way, because how do you spread jam on cream?
Actually, when you said about it, thinking about it in a practical way, I thought if I was making it at home, I would probably put the jam on first.
Yeah, and then because you can dollop cream. It's very difficult. It's very difficult to dollop cream and then kind of get the jam on the top, because you want a bit of jam and a bit of cream in every bite, right? That's the way I look at it.
And you want it to be scented and look nice and stuff. It's probably easier to do that with the cream, but.
Exactly. And then someone said to me, but then what do you do with put the cream? You put the other half of the scone on top. And then they blew my mind at that point, because then I'm going I hadn't even thought of that, putting another one, and then you've literally done both. Well,
that's usually when it all squeezes out and goes all over you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've got a big mouth, but I'm not sure I'm getting a whole scone with all that jam, all that cream in my mouth at the same time. That's the only question you can get wrong on my show, to be fair. So, and even then, you can't really get it wrong, because there's a whole county of Devon that's going to agree with you, even if no one else does, or I don't. So the second question is: who is your favourite Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle?
Oh gosh, I don't know the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles very well.
All Renaissance painters. So you got
I know
Raphael, Leonardo, Michelangelo, and Donatello, and then you have the giant rat, Master Splinter. Any one of those there's no wrong answers with the turtles.
Isn't Donatello? I was going to say, isn't he one of the 3 Musketeers? But
no,
he's a painter as well, isn't he?
He's a Renaissance painter. The 3 Musketeers, or the 4 Musketeers, are Athos, Porthos, Aramis, and D'Artagnan.
D'Artagnan. Okay, yeah.
I've just my brain's still working. I was sitting there thinking, what if I struggled with that? Because me and my brothers, there's 4 of us. I was always D'Artagnan. We used to play the 4 Musketeers.
Yes.
Yeah, my brother, who's a little bit more on the portly side, Porthos. Just happened. That's just the way it worked. Yeah. So anyway, so pick a turtle.
I'll go for Raffaello because I like
Raphael. Yeah, he's good.
His art, Raphael's art.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They say there's no wrong answers with the old turtles. So, and then the final question is a thinker. All right. So have a little think. Don't have to answer straight away on this one. Would you rather be forced to sing along or dance along to every song you hear?
For me, definitely sing along.
Sing along.
Because I'm probably more self-conscious when I'm dancing, but I quite like singing.
Okay. I think I'm the same. I think I'm probably a better singer than I am a dancer, but I do like a bit of dad dancing. So I don't mind getting my groove on if the mood's right.
Yeah,
but if it was every song, I think I'd much rather sing along to every song than dance along to every song. I just think I'm too old for that. I'll get tired.
Yeah, it's the same as me.
Yeah,
getting a bit past probably being able to dance to every song in succession. But
yeah, so I mean, I talk all day long, so singing all day long would make no difference to me. It would just be like it's just what I do. So. Which is fantastic. So I don't necessarily
sing well, but I enjoy singing along to songs.
I think if you enjoy singing, then that's enough. Like genuinely, I like to think I'm not a bad singer. So most people said I'm a reasonable singer, but I think like you enjoy singing, then that's all that really matters.
I'm a sing along in the car kind of person.
I am. I'd be lost without music in the car. Like that for me. That would if someone said to you, "What's the worst thing that could happen to you?" Is like my radio breaks. In my stereo, my car radio breaks, because I would literally I wouldn't know what to do with myself. Genuinely, I think I would personally struggle. I'd get out and go and buy radio, just like sort of something.
You could listen from your phone.
Yeah, let's assume that's not even possible. It would just drive me.
But it's not as nice.
Not as nice, no, absolutely. I love being on the road with the radio cranked up and just like singing my lungs out. I don't care whether I'm singing good or bad at that point. Just enjoying the process.
It's like your own personal karaoke booth, really.
Karaoke, I love karaoke.
Yeah,
that's what. Yeah, I'm a big fan of karaoke. So, I wanted to, being holiday season, I wanted to pick up on go back and have a look at the year rather than looking at the posts of the week. So, one of the big news stories across the Motu this year has been the Treaty Principles Bill.
Yes.
Hugely divisive, hugely regressive, hugely racist in my mind. But to give a bit of a background on it, it was a bill that was part of the coalition agreement. So Mr. Seymour said that, in order for me to give you my support, I need this Treaty Principles Bill to come through. Now, both Winston First and National, I call it Winston First because I think that's basically what it's there for, basically also said that they don't support it, but they'll support it to a first reading. All right, which basically meant that from sort of, I think it was about October, November 2024, it kind of was in that kind of select committee, 6 months of select committee. So it was in the news cycle like all the flipping time. Every single day almost there was David Seymour telling you how everyone should be getting support behind it and all those kind of things. Knowing full well that Christopher Luxon and Winston Peters were going to kibosh it as soon as it got to first reading. It was one of those things that I felt during that time that it was just an opportunity for racism to get airtime, and it was one of those things that you kind of looked at and kind of gone, it didn't need that space in the media.
No, it didn't need to happen at all.
Didn't need to happen at all because we knew it was we knew it was going nowhere. But it was a very divisive, a very angry period of time where it enabled racism to come to the fore that was perhaps not, it's obviously there in the past, but it was obviously under the surface. But it enabled a lot of racism to kind of bubble up to the surface.
I find a lot of those things often come to the surface on social media. Like people often won't want to say them in public.
No, exactly.
But quite often some of the really negative things come up when they're hiding behind anonymous profiles on Facebook and so on.
I do, and obviously I spend a lot of time on Facebook,
Yes.
with the group, and I see it like on a daily basis. Thankfully, What's News Dunedin doesn't have that kind of same underbelly that perhaps other groups do, but I am members of other groups where you see it quite visibly.
Yes, and I have seen that too.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just, but it's like, the thing is, when you've got your senior politicians enabling racism, that's the bit that I look at that and go like, what where's the gain here? What are they thinking? What is their end game?
Well, I guess Luxon wanted to be in government. And,
Yeah, he would have sold his grandkids, literally to get. He would have sold his grandmother, like to get into power. And we've seen a little bit of that.
I just don't know what his game is. He's part Māori himself.
Well, that's what he keeps telling everyone, but it doesn't come across that way, does it?
Well, even Winston Peters, he doesn't seem to be particularly kind to Māori people. But. Yeah, it was just bizarre. And I do remember on Waitangi Day this year in Otepoti going on a march.
Yes.
And just thinking it was so different to like the previous year. I'd gone down to Otakau Marae and it was wonderful. It was just like a celebration. And then, I mean, the march was fun in many ways and good music and good people to march with. But there was obviously this concern that our founding document was going to be tampered with, all for the sake of forming that coalition government.
Yeah, and I was on that march too, and it was a very powerful and kind of like soul moving kind of an event, and that I hadn't been part of before, but I felt as Pakeha that I had to stand
and support it.
In support,
yes.
I mean, I'm what's the right word? Tangata tiriti,
Yes.
and want to make sure that my support is vocal and noticed with regards to that.
Absolutely, and I think that is important for those of us who are tangata tiriti, to stand up and show that support.
And it did that. And it's one of the things that you kind of actually look at and kind of go like, is the good thing that came out of it, if there was any good to come out of it, was actually how vocal the support was against it.
Yes.
If that makes sense. How much people got up and went, no, David, this is wrong. And there was a few loud voices in there kind of going, oh yeah, everyone's the same. It's like, well, hang on a second. No one's saying it's different to that, but actually, we are a bicultural nation by our very creation. We are, and it's one of the things that I loved about this country when I came here was how we were very different in that regard to where I came from. Because the UK is just basically somewhere that's been invaded so many times that no one's really sure where anyone comes from, and then we had massive migrant in populations, of which my parents are part of that migrant population.
Right.
So, there's no such...
So where did your parents come from?
So my East London and Bangalore.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, exactly. So looking at me, you wouldn't know, So people make a lot of assumptions about me when it comes to my heritage, which I
have similar things in my heritage. So it's
31% Indian, according to my ancestry DNA test that I got for my birthday last year. Was it last year? It must have been last year. No, it wasn't this year, the year before. 31% Indian.
Yeah, because you've got quite dark eyes. And it's,
very dark eyes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
so I do tan quite nicely in the sun.
I'm the same as you, and we've got. Yeah, it's interesting. I've got two blonde, blue-eyed grandfathers who their whakapapas are very, very clear. Traced back to like 1300 on each side. But then my two grandmothers are darker and more olivey, and there's question marks on either side.
Yeah.
My brother did alleviate some of those question marks by doing a DNA test on my the stuff on my mum's mother's side came through, which was some African and Arab blood.
Wow.
Which the DNA test said was from Togo in North Africa.
Fantastic.
And we knew that our great-grandfather came from Trinidad and Tobago. So my mum had, because she was an archivist, did some research and discovered that Togo was a prominent slave trading port And there are a lot of people that ended up going from there to the colonies, including Trinidad and Tobago. So that's likely what happened
the journey that happened.
Yeah, well, our great-grandfather was born in Australia, but his father came from Trinidad and Tobago in it was like the 1860s to Sydney.
Yeah.
And he had mulatto written on his papers, which means half European, half something else.
Okay.
And the something else nobody gave a damn about back then, so it was just colonials,
Yeah. But it's fascinating. I got so much joy out of looking at my heritage, and
it's very cool.
The thing that surprised me the most is I'm 51% Scottish.
Oh wow, yeah.
I didn't know it. I wouldn't have a clue. As far as I knew, going back a couple of generations, there was no Scottish to be seen. But apparently, I'm 51% Scottish, 31% Indian, and then a mixture of everything in between, pretty much.
Wow,
which is fantastic.
Yeah.
So,
because we were always raised, Dunedin was always regarded as the Scottish city, and I know, like my dad's obviously with the surname McLay, you can see the Scottish heritage there.
Yes.
But the irony was that my paternal grandmother used to go on and on about the Scottish heritage, and eventually they did a DNA test of her and discovered she only had about 10% Scottish. She was mainly Scottish, like she'd taken the McLay name by marrying my grandfather,
right,
who was the blonde, blue-eyed.
Yeah, absolutely.
But she had a whole different look, and we discovered later that there is possibly a dab of Māori there, which hasn't been proven conclusively, so I don't like to conclusively say I am Māori or anything like that, but there's that. And there was also some Ashkenazi Jewish.
Yep. My wife's got that in her heritage.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Lots of people do. And my grandmother's story was they travelled around Europe. Nobody liked them, kicked them out of all these places. They went to Ireland thinking Ireland would be better somehow, and it wasn't. So they converted to Christianity, and this is obviously way before the Holocaust or anything, and then started intermarrying with Christians. But her, it was Nana's great-grandfather, came via Australia to here originally. I think they'd gone from Ireland to Cornwall and then to Australia and then out here. So
it's
all very interesting.
But again, it just goes to prove that we're all here for different reasons and through different pathways. But at the same time, we're all here on Tangata Whenua's
yes.
Say so, and therefore there needs to be that respect and that partnership, and
yes.
and that was something that David Seymour has been trying desperately to
undermine,
and continues to do so. Like it's just again, the thing that proves to me how much that Christopher Luxon wanted to be in power was the Regulatory Standards Bill, which has just passed into law, that both Winston First and National are basically saying they'd repeal at the next election. So, like, why? That's how badly you wanted power, was to let legislation that you are fundamentally morally opposed to come into play in order to get your seat at the table. I find that morally reprehensible.
Oh yeah, I completely agree.
I could not sell my ethics that way.
No,
as a politician, and I find it disgusting that that's the person that's leading our country.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I don't have any disagreement there.
That's fair enough. Let's move on to the next subject of this year. The big year has been local election year, so we now have a new city council.
Yes,
I ran. I didn't get in. I got some reasonable.
Was it your first time running?
Second time running,
right?
Yeah. So, but again, I got some reasonable votes. Did better than I did the year before.
And I know people often build it up over a few years before they get in.
Absolutely. And Doug Hall Jr. was one of those. But he ran last year for the first time. He's actually got on. Mickey Treadwell, a new councillor, has got on for the first time, but he had the support of the Greens, which I think has obviously helped him. We've had Benedict Ong has become a new councillor, and Andrew Sims has become a new councillor, and John Chambers has become a new councillor, and then the rest of the people are from before. Interestingly, people like Andrew Wiley, Kevin Gilbert, Jim O'Malley,
Mandy Mayhem,
but these are the ones that kind of didn't get in. So Jim O'Malley stood but didn't. Kevin Gilbert stood but didn't get in, and there's a couple of Andrew Wiley stood but didn't get in.
Yeah.
Which I find very interesting, because actually I kind of did better than some of those guys. So knowing an incumbency does tend to help people come back to the table. You know, if you, once you're in and recognised. The surprise for everyone, I believe, was Benedict Ong.
Right.
Because he came from nowhere, didn't really seem to be anything. Well, he didn't really have much in the way of anything other than a lot of advertising in the ODT.
Yes.
And then suddenly was sitting around the table. Now, he ran. He did run for mayor, and I think that does give people an advantage. When it comes, it's like, you know, almost free marketing, because you actually get a lot more coverage from media and stuff like that.
Although there were a very big number of people running for council
It
places.
it was the biggest. It was like 54 candidates running for council, which for 14 seats, which in itself is quite like wow. You know?
Your chances of getting one of those seats is quite small.
Yeah, exactly. And then you consider when you're only if you've got 6 new councillors, then you're only fighting for 6 new seats, right? So the 6, because the other ones went to incumbents. You know, obviously the mayor turned over as well.
Yes.
So we've had two single term mayors, with Aaron Hawkins previously and Jules Radish last time round. And now we've got
Jules Radish is still at the council table.
Still at the council table. Yeah, absolutely. I find that a little bit strange. I genuinely find that strange. I mean, because when Aaron ran and was mayor, when he ran at the next election, he didn't run for council. He either was going to be the mayor again or step away from the table. Yeah. And I genuinely believe that's a better way of doing it. That's in my view. I mean, that wasn't Jules Radish's view. That's kind of like hedging your bets. Like, you kind of know you're not going to get on. You're not going to be mayor again. You're not getting the top seat, but you're going to get.
I guess there's a precedent for both ways.
There's arguments for either way, right? Ultimately, I could see why Aaron took a fairly moral stance and said, if I'm not going to be the mayor again, then I'm not going to be the ex-mayor around the table, if that makes sense. Because one of the things I'm noticing now is that it does feel, and this is a personal opinion only, is that Jules hasn't quite worked out that he's not the mayor yet. So he's being a very forthright and know-it-all kind of ex-mayor, which is what Aaron chose. And I guess that's the danger
of if you have somebody in that position.
Yeah, exactly. So we've got some new councillors around the table. Some very interesting dynamic going on. Russell Lund, another one. I forgot Russell Lund. Russell Lund was another one that came in as a new one. Yeah. A new one. It is interesting that we seem to have swung back to the left, if that makes sense. With Aaron previously, we had a sort of left leaning majority of people, right? When Jules Radish was mayor, we kind of had a right-leaning one, but depending on how some of the people voted, we might get some left-leaning kind of conversations. It feels very much that we've gone back to a left-leaning majority.
Well, I'm quite a lefty, so I'm not sorry about that.
No, I'm far more left-leaning than I ever have been in my entire life, and I would have been right-leaning slightly beforehand. But I'm now left of centre, as opposed to ever so slightly right of centre. I've gone from thinking about me to thinking about we. That's the way. That's the way I view it. That's how I see the difference between.
That's how I see it
between the sides. I'm more interested in making sure we succeed than making sure me succeeds.
Yeah, and I feel often the right-leaning, it's about money above people. And
yes, exactly. Whereas I think the other side is people above money, and that's where I fall now. What are your thoughts on the council? Have you given it much thought? Are you obviously they've still got 3 years to kind of to actually prove their worth with regards to it. And
I think Sophie Barker, the new mayor, is very capable, and her business background will, stand in good stead. And I think, as you say, they have a good mix of people. There's probably going to be tensions at times, but, there always have been, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. It means that different views are being expressed.
Yeah. I think Sophie's got a job ahead of her. I genuinely do. I think she's going to have a tough 3 years. Because she's got some people there, including people like Andrew Sims, who ran for the mayoralty, that are already kind of running for the mayoralty next time through. It very much feels that they've already started campaigning for the top job, and they're trying to. Yeah,
and that's one of the problems with democracy. Even if you look at the, I was going to say the national government, meaning the government of the country, but you could apply it to the national government as well. That you get this competition for who's going to be in next. And obviously it's better than having a dictatorship, but sometimes you do wonder whether it's all about the turnover and getting in the next time.
Yeah. Let's talk about hospital before we move on to talk about you, because that's been a year of strangeness. Because if I'm thinking back to this time last year, we were in a holding period, because around about October time 2024, they put everything on hold, and they kind of said, like, we're going to go back to the drawing board. Maybe we'll reuse the old hospital. Do you remember that when they were saying we might?
Well, there were so many different theories.
We might reuse the old hospital, refurbish that, right, and then or we might downsize the one we've got, or we might do something completely different. And I said right back in October 2024 that I felt that was very much, while they were dangling we'll reuse the old hospital, they wanted to do that. So in order, when they came back after Christmas in early January 2025, that they would bring back this kind of cut down hospital and make us be thankful that that's what we got instead, right? and that's exactly how it played out, because and I said this, and so we were all screaming and yelling about, we wanted this hospital, we needed to be fit for purpose. We marched and we did all these things, and then they kind of went, oh no, it's going to do it the budget, and then they kind of put us in this limbo until after Christmas. Then they came back and went, oh, no, we're going to build the hospital the way we said we're going to build it, but we're just going to leave out a floor, in the sense of they were talking about like not even having that floor, so they were going to shell out that floor, right? And then they wanted us to be thankful. They basically came out and said we are going to cut, and end up with less beds than what we've got in our existing old hospital right now. And they wanted praise for doing that, because what they didn't do was refurbish the old hospital.
It obviously doesn't make sense at all, does it? It
doesn't. But the sad thing for me is we've accepted that. Like now, a year on, in almost a year on, we're kind of going, that's what we got.
But I thought they were continuing the building of the new.
They are. They're continuing the building of the new. They're going to build it. They're going to give us 11 floors. They're going to leave the 6th floor completely empty, which means that they're actually going to cost. It's going to cost more money to, when they finally kit out that 6th floor. It's going to be a more expensive rate than if they did it right now.
Oh, okay. I wasn't aware of that about the 6th floor.
Yeah. So again, like they're saying we're going to do it at budget, but they're going to make the next bit more expensive, because it's actually not the cheapest time to build something is today, because it gets more expensive tomorrow, because the cost of everything goes up. So that's just naturally. But they did it in such a way that they literally wanted us to say thank you for giving us less than what we asked for, and less than what they promised. What's disappointed me is that we've since then, in the last 11, 12, 10, 11 months, we've done nothing about complaining about, complaining about that.
There was a really massive march, which I went on as
well. I was on that as well.
Were you on that as well?
Yeah, totally.
I was thinking you probably would be.
Yeah.
And people expressed their opinions very, very clearly.
Exactly.
Then I'm not sure why. I can only imagine that maybe people aren't aware of exactly what's going on with it.
I think the problem was at the time is our ex-mayor, Jules Radich.
Right.
Because he's very much I genuinely believe he's a national supporter or whatever, but he very much kowtowed down to everything that was coming through from national, etc., and he was quite happy to accept it and try and talk it up as if it was they were giving you something fantastic when they were actually giving you a poo sandwich, right?
So he was quite pro the hospital, wasn't he?
He was forward facing, but he was dragged there by the council.
Right.
That's my understanding of it. He wouldn't have been as visible.
Because I remember them all wearing those T-shirts.
Yeah, absolutely. But he wouldn't have been there at the front if he hadn't been mayor. He would unlikely to have been he was pushed forward to it was pushed much more by people like Steve Walker and David Benson Pope and Chris Gary and people like that in the background, and he had to front it because he's the mayor, right? So it was kind of like,
and that sort of remembering what he was like on Palestine. That all makes sense.
Exactly. And so then that's kind of what's happened. So because then he believed that we got something that was better than nothing, because he was the one that said, before Christmas, it's a great Christmas present, and they had to walk that back because it wasn't much of a Christmas present, was that there was no further kind of impetus to do anything because the mayor's not going to lead it, right? So I guess that was the problem that came with that. We're going to get the same size building. We're just not going to get the same. We're not going to get the insides of the building that we were promised. We're not going to have as many beds, and who knows if they get in again next year.
And I guess is the potential to eventually upgrade it to
Well, that's the
having
whole
that
point.
number of beds?
It is. That's what they're shelling it out. What they call shelling it out, which is basically putting in. There's going to be a floor there, but it's going to be nothing on it.
Yeah.
And then they could put those extra beds in and increase the capacity. But again, it comes at a greater cost because if you do it in 2031 instead of doing it in 2025, you've got 6 years of inflation. So therefore, it's actually going to cost. It ends up costing everyone.
Okay,
more,
so
more
they're
money.
basically mucking around and.
They're just mucking around in order to say that they've met budget, when at the same time they're giving landlords $2.9 billion and they're giving tobacco companies $200 million and they're giving $15 billion worth of tax cuts to their mates and all those kind of things.
And they're taking money from people with disabilities and
exactly. So they're punching down on the vulnerable while lining the pockets of the rich, and then saying we
that
haven't
was
got
another march I went on. I have to say
we haven't got any money.
Disability funding cuts.
I know it's been a very regressive 3 years.
Because our youngest daughter has cerebral palsy and is a wheelchair user, so that was, we were quite horrified by that one.
No, exactly, and they moved respite care and all manner of different. There was lots of different bloody
that
things.
all affected.
Of course, it would do absolutely. So there's been clearly been some big news over the last 12 months. So. We're going to draw a line under that, Kirsteen, and we're going to I'm going to just get a word from our wonderful sponsor, and then we're going to talk about you.
Yeah, sure.
Have you checked out Hazur Kebab yet? It's your go-to for a delicious lunch, a tasty dinner, or anything in between. Order online to save time and pick up some delicious, authentic Turkish cuisine in just minutes. HazurKebabCafe.co.nz. Dine in or take away at 906 George Street.
Do you like a kebab?
Yeah.
I do. Have you had a kebab at Hazur?
No. I've been to Dost quite a few times, which is very good as well.
Around the corner from here. I've had a few kebabs at Dost.
So it's Hazur.
Hazur. H-U-Z-U-R. And they're at the top end, they're opposite George Street Normal School.
Right.
On the top end of George Street.
Yes, I think I do know where they are.
And they're fantastic.
I may even have been once.
You'll know if you have, because they're just it's fantastic food. And they've been sponsoring the show for the last 2 years, and they're just awesome.
Oh, how brilliant of them.
Awesome people. So little gap in the middle where Full 21 did.
Sort of culture?
Turkish.
Oh, they're Turkish. Okay.
Turkish, yeah. So
wonderful.
So no, it's just fantastic food. Cooked with love. It always just feels like the juiciest, flavoursome food, like
cooking,
it almost absolutely. But it's just, and they're just a wonderful bunch of people. Like all the staff, it's like organised chaos. That's how I described it one time, and now Mustafa uses that to describe his staff as organised chaos, because it's just they're like ants in a colony. They all know what they're doing. And they're just like crazy, but they're all got a smile on their face. It's just like, it's just they
all know where they're going and
clearly enjoying their work.
I'll check that out again.
I would, they're fantastic people. So now I want to talk about you, and I don't know actually that much about you, right? So the reason that we've spoken is that I'm often looking for guests to come on the show, right? And one of the things that I've become aware of in the last little while is your Starfishing for Peace.
Yes.
Facebook group. All right, so which instantly appeals to me, because I love anything to do with peace, because I'm a peaceful person. Naturally.
I'm quite obsessed with the idea of peace for the world.
Absolutely. So maybe you can tell me a little bit about that journey, how that got you to where you got to, and just give us a little bit of a 5-minute, almost like the Cliff Notes version of Kirsteen and how you got here.
Yeah, well, that. A friend and I, Thera Stoff, coordinate a group called the Starfish Collective. So it's not only Kirsteen, it's very much Thera as well. Thera is quite humble and often doesn't put herself out there, but she does incredible work as well. I personally was involved in being a volunteer for a Syrian family back in 2017 and became quite involved with 2 Syrian families, actually. And then in the years that went by, they started talking about creating a community sponsorship program here in Aotearoa, I think based on the Canadian model. And Thera and I got together and thought, hey, we could do that. It's meant to be for any citizens as long as you can raise the money. You have to register as a charity. So that's what we did. And at the end of 2023 and the start of 2024, so on 2 separate dates, we brought in 2 former refugee families here to Dunedin, and both families are doing very well and very happy to be here. And across those two families, there are 5 children, and they're all really enjoying going to school here. So that was one of our very rewarding things. But of course, after we had that success, we started getting contacted from people around the world, all sorts of countries. We've had people from Congo, Somalia, Ukraine, as well as Middle East, saying that they would love to come here. And I can see why, because we're comparatively away from some of the crap that's going on in the world. And
there's plenty of that to get away from, to be fair.
Yes, absolutely. And Myanmar is another one. There's a lot of people from the conflict in Myanmar down on the Thai border in refugee camps. We don't hear as much about them on the news as we do about some of the other conflicts. But at the moment, the current government has sort of suspended the sponsorship program. We don't know if it's going to continue. Whenever we ask questions, we're told that, we haven't been told it's not going to continue.
Yeah.
But we haven't been told when we can continue it either. So we just, continue. We do things to raise funds. We have a young man, and I'll mention him because he has been mentioned publicly because we've used it to help raise funds for him, as an LGBTQ refugee. We've had wonderful support from the LGBTQ community here in Ōtepoti, and they did some drag shows and
Nice.
raised funds for him, and they were really cool drag shows as well, at Yours Cafe, and they're always doing those, but they did some that were specifically to raise money for him. So we got him out of Somalia and flew him to Cairo, so he's in Egypt now, and he's got all his papers in order and got his UNHCR number. So when those doors to New Zealand open, we can sponsor him, but it's just the stuff at this end that we're waiting for it.
So when did they stop that sponsorship? When did they draw a line under that? And I'm assuming that's this current government, or was it the government before?
Yes, but there has been sort of ups and downs with it, say, over about the last 8 or 9 years.
Right.
Because they first spoke of a pilot community sponsorship program back in 2018.
Okay.
They brought some people in. I think they mostly brought them to Timaru and Christchurch, and they were mostly sponsored by organisations like churches, whereas our organisation is non-religious. It's just a few people chucked together who are doing it.
Yeah.
And then it went into 2019. So these people did get people from various countries to come here. And we had the mosque shooting, of course, and some of the people who had been sponsored were killed in the mosque shooting. So that, was very, very upsetting, obviously, for the families and for all those who were involved working with them. And then not that long after that, because they had still declared it was a pilot program, we went into COVID. All the doors, including, so we have our refugee quota, which Red Cross usually deal with and look after, and that is 1,500 people a year. So this community sponsorship is 50 people, an extra 50 people across 3 years.
Okay.
Because it sort of takes 3 years to crank things up.
Yes.
But all this was drawn out by all these things that were happening. And in COVID times, we didn't even have our 1,500 come in.
No, of course not.
So community sponsorship wasn't going to happen either. And then finally in 2022, they said, yeah, it's going to happen. We go ahead. But it took us until end of 23 to get our first family in. And our first, we were actually very proud because ours was the first entire family. It was mum and dad and 3 kids. Somebody up north had got one individual in, but ours was the first whole family, if you see what I mean. Yeah. And so it was quite an incredible experience to actually have that success and get those people in and set up here.
What makes a person decide to do something as wonderful as that? Like what you've chosen to do? Like, I mean, because I think I could be. I consider myself to be a reasonably kind, giving human being.
Egalitarian,
right?
Yes.
And I think I could be sitting in a room for 50 years and not think that was the thing I should be doing, even though it just strikes me as being a wonderful idea. What was the trigger potentially for you to kind of go, we want to sponsor, we want to fundraise, we want to bring people?
I think for me
here?
personally, some of it is my personal background. I lived for 5 years in Japan, and during that time I travelled quite extensively to other countries in the area. And then I lived for 3 years in Vietnam, which of course was very, some people here think all Asia's the same. It's completely not.
Yeah.
And the language and culture are very different between Japan and Vietnam. And Vietnam, of course, was a country and still is a country recovering from, a very terrible war that they had back in the 60s and 70s. And there are still landmines going off. You can still see kids who are poisoned by Agent Orange, like it's taken hold and gone through a couple of generations now, but still causing birth defects over there. So I guess with the work in Vietnam, I think also personally when I was 18, because my parents split up when I was 14, when I was 18, my dad got married to a Palestinian woman. And she actually survived the Nakba. So she was 3. She's 80 now. And her family, who are Palestinian Christians, supported a Jewish family to come into their home, people off those boats that arrived. And then after about 3 months, they were basically told, okay, you guys can bugger off now. This is their house. And her dad apparently started protesting and got beat up. I don't know what soldiers it was, if they were British or newly formed Israeli in 1948. And they were told they had 24 hours to pack their bags and get out of that home that they lived in for generations. So we had always heard her story, from when I was 18 and she got with my dad. But since the events of it's October the 7th, isn't it, 2023, more and more information has come out about that. And I think also because Jeanette didn't remember herself, a lot of it because she was only 3, but she had older siblings who filled in some of those gaps. Like they said, as we left with our suitcases, they spat at us and they fled to Jordan. And she then had all her schooling in Jordan. And in the 60s, things were still pretty bad in the Middle East and Israel was still pushing into other countries, and the family had an opportunity to go to Australia. And I often think the irony is a lot of people say, oh, there are no Christians in Palestine. Well, there are, but a lot of them had the opportunity to leave because our, great Western machines accepted Christians and didn't accept the Muslims, which are why there are a whole lot more Muslims there now, because a lot of the Christians left. But a lot of them are still very bitter about the fact that they were forced out, as you would be.
Absolutely.
So I guess Jeanette's story and then my own multicultural heritage plus my experiences in other cultures. I had friends, and what led me to Vietnam was I had friends that were former refugees from Vietnam living in Japan. And I felt like during my 3 years in Vietnam, I saw every side of that war, including veterans who came back and tried to give something back to Vietnamese society, veterans on the Vietnamese side, people who sent up medical places for those who had suffered in Agent Orange across 3 generations, really. All those things, I think, culminated in me thinking, that's actually who I am. I want to be a helper if I can be. And we were just lucky that we found this way that, as I guess like my husband said, to some people that might be a small thing. It's only 5 people out of thousands and thousands or millions of people. You've got 99% of refugees don't get resettled. But if you look at it in a picture of history, it's enabling a family who might otherwise be killed or God knows what might happen to them. Their descendants and onwards are going to have a completely different, better life by that small action.
It is genuinely huge. Like to me, it's genuinely huge. That
and it's quite humbling to realise, some of those things when I really got my head around them. Like, oh wow, and then it gives you a sense of well, anything, okay, we may not be able to save the whole world. I would if I could, but but if we can do any small thing, because there are so many horrible things going on in the world at the moment, you think, well, if you can do any small thing to help any man, woman or child who's in that really crappy situation, why not? Why not go for it?
I'm a absolute massive advocate of like small pieces of kindness. Every small piece of kindness just rolls up and rolls up and rolls up into something that's ginormous. Like I'm an absolute advocate for that. And people say it to me about climate change and climate crisis and stuff, and they go like, "Well, China's doing this. Why should we do anything?" And I'm like.
I still stand there separating my rubbish and trying to do the right thing.
I'm doing. I mean, every day of the week, Kirsteen, and
I only go to town if I have several things to do, so I'm not taking the car and everything.
Exactly. No, if we all do those little things, then those little things absolutely roll up into something that's absolutely massive. And what you've just described is something that it's 5 people, but those 5 people are there'll be generations after those 5 people that exponentially are benefiting because you did that for 5 people. I've got some questions that are just starting to form around in my head. Before I ask them, I'm just going to get another quick word from our sponsor.
Have you checked out Hazur Kebab yet? It's your go-to for a delicious lunch, a tasty dinner, or anything in between. Order online to save time and pick up some delicious, authentic Turkish cuisine in just minutes. HazurKebabCafe.co.nz. Dine in or take away at 906 George Street.
So you've set up a charity in order to sponsor people into New Zealand, refugees.
Yes, but we see it as a general humanitarian charity.
Okay.
So we do support those who are already here. We will support anybody, not just former refugees. If there's something good that we can do, we try to do it.
Okay.
If it's within our capabilities, obviously.
No, fair enough.
But our ethos, we called ourselves the Starfish Collective, because Thera and I started talking about it at the Starfish Cafe down in St Clair. So that was sort of like our mini office for a while.
That's fair enough.
Yeah. But secondly, because have you ever heard of the starfish story?
No, I might when you tell it to me, but I couldn't say that I do right now beforehand. Go on.
Well, I think you'll really love it if you like those, things about those small acts of kindness adding up to something big. Basically, the story is that a little boy was running along the beach. There were all these starfish. They were washed up on the shore. They were drying out in the sand and it was a hot day in the sun because the tide was going out. And further along the beach, this little boy saw an old man. And the old man was stooping over, picking up the starfish one by one and throwing them back into the sea so that they would survive. And the little boy went up to the old man and said, "Well, look, there are millions of these things all over the beach. You can't possibly save them all. Why are you even bothering?" And the old man picked up one starfish, threw it back into the sea and said it made a difference to that one. So that's our ethos. It's like so many people will look at, for example, the refugee crisis and say, well, I can't help that. And, I'm sorry for what's happening to those people. But if you do hone in on one family, well, that is a difference that you're making, however small.
And that's the I spend my life doing that, right? If I pick up a piece of rubbish off the floor, in the big scheme,
I'm the same.
in the big scheme of littering, I've done nothing, but I've done that bit, and I firmly believe that that's what you have to do. I'm a firm believer in karma, in the sense that if all the good that I put out into the world, I'm hoping it some way comes back. Maybe not on me, but on reflects onto my family or my friends or whoever. I'm the kind of person that will pick up a dying bird and try and save it because it just feels like that's
the right thing to do.
It's the right thing to. It's the right
exactly.
thing to do. I've every single animal I've taken to the wildlife hospital has died, but not for the want of trying. Genuinely. Yeah. And I've taken penguins and I've taken swans and I've taken silver eyes and I've taken any. If I can't save it, I'm taking it. And
my 18-year-old son actually had a go at saving a bird last week, and it didn't survive. But
you've given it a go, right? And
and I was happy that for him as a 18-year-old male that he had that compassion, and still him and his girlfriend actually tried to save it.
Yeah, I'm glad. My kids are the same, right? So I'm glad that I'm seeing some of how I try and run my life as rubbing off on them, and that's going to rub off on their kids, and that's that exponential thing that then spread them all. And it's the same with climate change. You see people going like, oh, well, there's no. I mean, you just got to do it. You've got to, you've got to make choices. Your choices to do something. Do something because doing nothing and sitting there pretending that you have no impact on the world. What were you here for?
It's also pretty passive and helpless, isn't it?
Well, it is and none of these people would consider themselves to be passive or helpless.
I think sometimes too. Some of these people, like I've found online, particularly if I mention what we've done with bringing former refugees here, they'll say things like, "Why not help New Zealanders?" Yeah. And that makes me really grumpy because firstly, there's the assumption
that you're not helping New Zealanders as well.
And I think our youngest daughter is a foster child.
Right.
That was a New Zealand child that we have supported as our own, raised as our own daughter.
It is. It's mad, isn't it? It's like we can do multiple things at the same time. It's like when people say to me, it's like when people talk to me about council, right? Because obviously I've tried to run for council, and they go, "Oh, but they're doing this. Why do they do that?" And they could do both.
Palestine.
Yeah, exactly.
That somehow you can't support the treaty or support things here in Aotearoa if you're supporting Palestine.
Well, I had someone come at me on the page. I had someone come at me on the page the other day, all right, because I have my profile picture is at the moment is the Ukraine flag, all right, and I stand with Ukraine.
I support Ukraine as well, and I've been to lots
Palestine.
of their.
Yeah, exactly, and I'm the
into
same.
Palestine. Yeah,
but then the guy was at me kind of going, "What about Somalia? What about Congo? What about this? What about that?" And I'm like, "What about what I've just put up means that I can't be against people dying everywhere. I genuinely I don't want a single child killed. I don't want a single innocent killed. I don't even really want the guilty killed. I'm genuinely I don't even want the bad people killed. I don't want people dead, right? But you're trying to say that because I've got a Ukrainian flag, and they came at me hard, and I'm like, no, I'm not having that because it's my page, so I can do something about it. But it's like what. We can do more than one thing. We can be more than just one thing to one person. We can be multiple things to multiple people.
I completely agree.
All the time, right?
And I think the thing is to know especially as you're getting older, I'm in my 50s and, I have to know when I'm getting tired or, but I try and support the causes, as many of the ones that I feel with my heart that they are the right thing to do. I try to do that as much as possible, and I think if everybody did that.
So you also do a radio show, don't you? You also do a podcast as well,
and that's called Starfishing for Peace.
And what do you do on your show?
Basically, I interview people about peace-related issues. I've interviewed former refugees. I've interviewed people from churches and other organisations. I'm just trying to think. I've also done book reviews of various books related to peace issues. I've interviewed Māori, and people about the treaty. Very wide ranging. I mean, when you look at a path to peace, you kind of have to unpack all the things that are not peaceful and say, how can we move forward from here and make this good for everybody? As you said before about the we instead of the I. So that's sort of the angle that I try to go from when I'm asking people questions and that's what your Facebook group's about as well. Is that? Yes, and a lot of stuff on there is reposted stuff from around the world.
Yeah.
I guess I lean heavily on the Palestine stuff because there's a lot of that stuff out there, but I also probably, obviously as a Kiwi, lean heavily on the treaty and Aotearoa.
There's too much bad stuff out there, isn't there? Because actually there is too much. A lot of it gets lost, when you talk about Myanmar and
yes.
Vietnam and
Myanmar,
Congo,
beautiful country. I've been to Myanmar.
And there's atrocities going on all over the bloody place, and it breaks my heart. Like genuinely, it breaks my heart because actually
Sudan, Congo.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like, and then people kind of go, well, because it's not in the news, you're not thinking about it, or because it's like, you don't care about it. I care about it all.
I do think though sometimes protests need to be aimed at our government. Like, what can our government say about the situation? And obviously, I'm sure you'd agree with me, our government's been very lax about Palestine, and I think that's what a lot of New Zealanders are saying when they go on those protest marches. Like, if we sanction Israel, if we recognise Palestine, we are helping, not hurting that situation.
And
we're
we
also
need-
supporting Palestinians who are here in Aotearoa who unfortunately haven't been able to bring their closest relatives
here.
Yeah, well, the
absolutely.
Ukrainians got it in a snap, and I was
Exactly.
delighted for the Ukrainians.
So
I've
was
got
I.
Ukrainian friends, but
And then change of government means we've got to change of policy when it comes
I
to that.
was
It's
shocked
just-
by the and hate the sort of racial undertone of the fact that when it's European white people, they were in so
it's
quickly.
easy. Yeah.
And when you've got Palestinian families who have lived here for more than a
They're
decade,
human beings, right?
yeah, and they still can't bring their closest family. Yeah.
And I think that's a perfect place to stop. Thank you very much for coming on the show. Hope you have a wonderful 2026. But if you just sit there while I round out the show, that would be awesome. Thank you, Kirsteen. Well, that's a wrap for this week. Thank you for tuning in. I've been Richard Knights, and you've all been wonderful. Remember, if you're looking for robust, respectful adult debate about all things local and further afield, and a welcoming online community that doesn't take itself too seriously, come and find What's News Leading on Facebook and join our fun. On next week's show, we're talking to Christopher John Ford from Disabled Persons Assembly, and we look forward to seeing you next Friday at 12 on OAR FM. And if you want to listen to the show again, or simply share it with your friends, you can find the podcast at oar.org.nz, or even on Spotify, YouTube, or your favourite podcast provider.
This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On the Air.